Every industry has its own language, and so we've been collecting all the words that we use that we forget everybody in their industry doesn't use, and so we want to give you some real estate definitions. So the first word that we'll talk about is escrow. That's one of those words that means different things, honestly, in the real estate industry in different states. So let's talk about it in Tennessee. Escrow is when funds are held in escrow, is how we use it, and that's funds held with a party that is not in the transaction. So the buyer doesn't hold it, the seller doesn't hold it, neither of them have access. It's a third party holding the money and funds. Often now in Tennessee, it's one of the title companies is holding the funds in escrow. And so that escrow determines where that money goes. So let's say it's a buyer buying a house. As long as the buyer moves forward in their process, the money that's held in escrow gets credited back to them at closing. So the next group of terms we'll talk about starts with appraisal. So appraisal is when we have a third party, again, another third party that comes in and says what they believe the value of the home is. The buyer's already said, the seller's already said what they agree the value of the home is, but there's a third party person that comes in and does the appraisal. Very often it's because there's a loan involved and the bank are the people who are getting the appraisal to make sure that their investment is solid. And how an appraisal works is they use comps, which is a term we use that's shortened from comparable sales. So these are sales that are like your home. If you've got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in a certain neighborhood, they're going to try to find 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes in the same neighborhood to say what are the comps that support the value of the home and what does that really look like. Another word that we use in the financing side of things is APR. And a lender will tell you more about that, but really APR is something different than your interest rate. So you want to make sure that when you're looking at lenders and looking at what those different things are, that you look at the APR, because that includes all the fees associated with their mortgage as well as the interest rate. Because if I'm a lender and I can give you a 2% interest rate, but I'm going to charge you $20,000 in fees, that's maybe not as good as somebody's going to give you a 5% interest rate, but do it for $1,000 in fees. So just make sure that's what APR means. That's why you should care about it. Another term that we have is appreciation. So that is you being so great and me telling you that. No, I'm just kidding. That's the regular word of appreciation. But for appreciation in real estate, that is how much has your home gone up in value since you purchased it. And that leads kind of into equity, which is another term. So your house could have not gone up at all. Like I met with somebody who they bought their home 10 years ago for $290,000 and now it's worth maybe $300,000. That happens a lot with investment property. So there wasn't a lot of appreciation. However, in 10 years, you've paid down your mortgage a whole lot. And equity is the difference between where you can sell and where your mortgage balance is. So that person had paid down their mortgage almost $50,000. So she had $50,000 in equity, even though she didn't have appreciation. Another term is broker. That can mean a lot of things in Tennessee. We work as brokers when we have a real estate license. We are affiliate brokers when we've not taken the extra classes that make us what would be a true broker. Now, if somebody is a true broker, it means they've taken hundreds of extra hours of classes. Their education level is much higher. They've been in the business at least 3 years. They're just a higher quality of education. Affiliate broker, there's nothing wrong with that either. It just means they have to be working under a broker, and that those two people have to make sure that the broker who has more experience is making sure that the affiliate broker is doing the right thing. We have both on our team. There's nothing positive or negative about them. Then closing is another thing. What is closing? When does it happen? What does it mean? Closing in Tennessee is the day that everybody sits down and signs their paperwork. It's when the loan money gets sent over and all of that. Now, the day that you actually get possession of your home is different than closing potentially, because our contract state, unless something is changed in the negotiations, that you get possession of your home whenever the deed is recorded with the state. So you've got two title companies, one of them for the buyer, one of them for the seller. The buyer sends the money to the seller gets the money, so then the seller records the deed with the state, and that's the point that you get possession of your home. 8 times out of 10, that happens the same day. But if you do your closing, let's say at 4:30 on Tuesday, there's no way that all those documents and like all the funds are going to get transferred and all that's going to happen. Probably all that's going to happen, and then you'll have possession of your house the next day. So that's closing. And then the last thing that a lot of people ask us about is contingencies. So that's what I was talking about with the escrow, all the different ways that you can get your, you cannot move forward with a sale and still get your earnest money back. So most common things are inspection, contingency, which means I'm going to buy this house contingent on the inspection having, not being something scary or that I'm not expecting. Another contingency that we see a lot is the appraisal, which we already talked about that. So I'm going to buy this house contingent on the appraisal being the value that we've agreed to or more. Then another one is contingent on financing. So I'm going to buy this house contingent on my ability to get a loan. So if you lose your job the day before closing and you can no longer qualify for the loan, you would get your earnest money back and you wouldn't have to move forward in the transaction. Another one that we see more often in a buyer's market than in a seller's market is contingent on home sale. So that's a buyer saying, I'm going to move forward and purchase this home contingent on the home that I'm living in selling. And that's a whole nother video about when to sell your home and when to put it on the market and how to buy a house if you're living in one already. But that's another contingency that we see sometimes. Often in a seller's market, it's not a contingency that a seller will accept, but it does work. So that's our definitions.